My name is Gordwin Odhiambo. I'm a documentary photographer from Kenya. I was born and raised in Kibera, Nairobi. So my photography is mostly about creating fresh and new narratives of the place I call home. And my photography work has mostly involved the activities of young men and how they're navigating the situations around Nairobi, informal settlements, and other places. So one of my work that I'm really interested in showing people is also work that involves young men. And it's one of the things that I feel like people haven't taken a keen interest or they haven't thought about it much. And that is the work, this is the work that I'm going to show. And it shows a kind of a scenario where we as people from the community are not familiar with it because of how we view it. So as a local photographer, sometimes we do have more work to do than just photography. For me as a person coming from Kibera, I have a responsibility that is more than just photography. I need to tell a fresh story that hasn't been told before, and sometimes it can be a challenge because most of the previous work that have been done in Kibera have mostly been done by people who are not much familiar with the area, or I can say people who, yeah, I can say most of the work I've seen have been done by people not from Kibera. So this work for me is particularly very interesting, and it's also a powerful work, and I have a deep connection with it. So shine on your way with freedom is a so as a young man from Kibera, sometimes when we face some situations like death, our burial ceremony is not taken into serious consideration, mostly depending on how the person died. You'll get that if a person has been killed by the police, they'll just be rushed to the mortuary and be taken to the cemetery for burial. But because when that happens, you'll find that only the family or only a few members of the family, or not even a family members, come to the ceremonies. And to find a scenario where young people can be able to mourn and celebrate one of their own in a, for me, that's something that you haven't seen before. So this story is a story of a young man who was killed by accident. And I wanted to portray this series in a way that it captures the beauty of what these young men lack sometimes. Like for me, it has nothing to do with the dynamism of the photos, or sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with that, but the moment in which there's calm and young people are able to peacefully do their work. Yeah. So Shine on Our Way is from a death of young man, and it's a 1 week photography work that captured the way in which other young men are trying to show support for one of their own who has died. So this Collins collecting money to be used for the burial purposes of Simon Nganga, who died on an accident, and he was someone who was loved by other fellow young men. Yeah. So it's still, these are young men who are coming to help in fundraising for the burial. Personally, this is an interesting story in that it's very difficult for someone who's not living in Kibera to capture these moments, because for me, these are very solemn moments that most of the photographs that I took happened at night when these young men were away from the public eye and into their spaces, either celebrating or mourning one of their own. And it also stems from the fact that most of the work that you have done uh, ends at that point where someone has died. But I wanted to see how the death of one person can cause a cumulative effect to others around them. And as young men, we don't get to do this. We don't get to cry. We don't get to celebrate one of their own, because when they die, we don't want to get associated with them because maybe they have been killed by the police, and maybe the stories surrounding that, sometimes we young men don't want to associate with that. So we just leave uh, the person at death. But for me, I wanted to explore more of what's happening after death. So this is the effect after death now, and how important and how in the past you have taken the lives of these young men for granted. Yeah. So that's one of my stories. It's for me, it's very personal. It's an interesting story, and so the byline for it is, as young men from Kibera, when someone has been murdered, we all eat. We try not to make it affect us. In cases where someone has been killed by the police, we even try not to associate with the person because we don't want to be seen as part of their close cycles. This photo series explores the ripple effect of the death of a young man by accident who was loved by his friends and community at large. The celebration of life took a week before he was buried. I wanted to capture the freedom of how young men were going to respond to this, letting their anger and frustration out. To me, it was a show of togetherness, intimacy, and protection like I've seen among young people. Yeah. So it's a very personal story, and it's an ongoing. It's something that I started some weeks ago, and it's just explore more into the community that I call home as a photographer. The other story that I want to share is also uh, also supports the fact that I want to create new narrative of the place I call home, because for me, if for instance now I Google Kibera, what I'll see is on the images, what I'll see is a series of landscaped photos without a human touch, a human feeling. Also, one of the things in my photography is to create a connection between people and the environment in which other people from outside as viewed from just a landscape perspective. This is just a landscape perspective of the place I call home. So for me, I wanted to have a face to a place I call home. Try to show more faces to this place because it's more of people than what we actually see on Google or any other place. So this current project show, this story won the East African Awards for this year, and it shows the strength and resiliency of a community amidst a pandemic. So these are Valentine Ayuma doing an online ballet session in their house. So the ballet online session was organized online, and in order for them to stop doing it, they found ways in which they can continue doing it by not going to the center, but by doing it through the phone, Facebook Live. Babies born during the pandemic, and how accessible was food during the pandemic, terms of religion, how are we keeping social distances in churches and our praying fields? For me, actually, one of the one of the things that interests me about this project is how people from the community selflessly came to help others where they can, like midwives. Like for instance, at this time in Kibera, midwives are not allowed to give birth, but they are allowed to check for birth activities with the mothers. Yeah. Also, this is also one of my interesting photos. So from this photo, this is a young man called David Avido, who is a designer from Kibera. And during the pandemic, he decided to help people with masks for free. So he took out the remains from his locker, from the clothes that he was making to make masks for the people of the community. And he was actually awarded a presidential award from the work he was doing from the community, just in 4 years. Yeah. So that's my second work, and it has primarily focused on, if you've seen, young men and the activities around Kibera during the pandemic. For me, it was very important to be out during that time because I wanted to show how this community was going to respond to the pandemic too. So the third work is, apart from also creating and fresh narratives, we also want to create awareness and some of the critical issues we have in our society, especially in Kibera, is inclusion. How do we include a transgender? How do we include uh, the disabled into the activities that we do? And we also take them uh, as regular people with the regular activities inside our community. So you'll find that most of the times, the disabled people they have institutions where they just go and stay there that hinders them or blocks them from having conversations with the community or just be in the community to so that people can see them and be more appreciative of their existence. So for me, I wanted to capture this very interesting story of the designer Avido, who decided to have transgender, the deaf, and the disabled in his design show in a festival. Also, I will mostly insist on, as a photographer, I want to create fresh uh, narrative of the place I call home. At the same time, we have a huge responsibility to do because how we are viewed from the community as local photographers will determine how someone is going to be viewed from outside. And also, our work being outside shapes a lot, does a lot to what someone who's coming in, like it shapes their work. It tries to, in a way, show them that the way this community has previously been viewed is different from how we are supposed to view it. So it's still a work in progress. There might be several repetitive images. Yeah, I hope you are liking the images. And also, I think my work as a local photographer relies more on me being outside and also me being in conversation with people. And if like high percentage of the people that I've photographed are people that I've met before, or maybe I've studied at one point the same school, or like these are people that I know. And for me, that is something that I like, photographing someone that I know. So there are a lot of images, like 50. So just go through it. Yeah, so that's my work, and I hope you like it. If you have any question, you can always reach out. Thank you.